The winds of change are sweeping across the African continent. For decades, the United States held significant sway, both economically and militarily. But, the landscape is shifting. Two new players have entered the game, vying for influence and opportunity: China and Russia. China, with its vast economic might, is pouring billions into infrastructure projects and trade deals, rapidly becoming Africa's most important economic partner. Russia, on the other hand, is leveraging its military expertise and strategic partnerships to expand its footprint, particularly in unstable regions. This new scramble for Africa presents a challenge for the United States. Years of inconsistent engagement and a focus on aid over strategic investment have left the U.S. playing catch-up. The question now is, can the U.S. adapt and compete in this new era of geopolitical competition? The answer lies in understanding the strategies of its rivals and recognizing the urgent need for a sustained, strategic and comprehensive approach to engagement in Africa. China's rise as an economic superpower is undeniable, and its impact is being felt acutely in Africa. With a focus on pragmatism and mutual benefit, China has woven itself into the fabric of Africa's economic development. At the heart of China's strategy is investment. Massive sums are being poured into infrastructure projects across the continent. Roads, railways, ports, and energy grids are being built at an astonishing pace, funded by Chinese loans and grants. This infrastructure development serves a dual purpose. It not only facilitates economic growth and improves living standards in Africa, but also creates new markets for Chinese goods and services. China's approach is welcomed by many African leaders who see it as an opportunity to accelerate development and reduce dependence on traditional Western donors. China's infrastructure projects in Africa are not merely about building physical structures, they are about building relationships and influence. These projects are often accompanied by the influx of Chinese workers and businesses, creating new economic ties. Take for instance the case of Ethiopia. Chinese investment has transformed the country's infrastructure from the modern Addis Ababa-Djibouti railway to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a massive hydroelectric project. These projects have propelled Ethiopia's economic growth but have also increased its dependence on China. This dependence gives China significant leverage in its dealings with African nations. China's focus on infrastructure is a long-term strategy. It is about securing access to resources, opening new markets, and establishing itself as the dominant economic power in Africa. China's engagement in Africa extends beyond economic matters. It is also investing heavily in soft power, seeking to win over the hearts and minds of African people. Chinese cultural centers are springing up across the continent, offering language courses, martial arts training and cultural exchanges. Chinese media outlets are expanding their reach, presenting a more positive narrative about China's role in Africa. Moreover, China has been actively involved in providing development assistance, particularly in the health and education sectors. Chinese doctors and teachers are working in underserved communities, providing essential services and fostering goodwill. This multifaceted approach to soft power is helping to reshape perceptions of China in Africa, positioning it as a more attractive partner than traditional Western powers. Section 5. The Bear's Embrace. Russia's military influence grows. While China focuses on economic dominance, Russia is making significant inroads militarily. Leveraging its Cold War-era ties and its growing military capabilities, Russia is expanding its influence in Africa, often filling the vacuum left by waning Western engagement. One of Russia's key strategies is the provision of military hardware and training. From fighter jets and helicopters to tanks and small arms, Russia has become a major arms supplier to African nations. This military assistance often comes with strings attached. In exchange for arms deals, Russia secures access to strategic resources, military bases, and political support on the international stage. Russia's growing military presence is particularly evident in unstable regions like the Sahel, where it has deployed mercenaries and military advisors, ostensibly to combat terrorism and insurgency. Section 6. Strategic partnerships, from arms deals to private armies. Russia's engagement in Africa goes beyond traditional military cooperation. It has forged strategic partnerships with several African nations, offering security guarantees and economic incentives in exchange for political allegiance. One example is the Central African Republic, where Russian mercenaries, notably the Wagner Group, have been accused of human rights abuses while propping up the government. This involvement has given Russia significant influence over the country's political and economic affairs. Russia's use of private military companies like the Wagner Group is a controversial but effective tactic. It allows Russia to project power and advance its interests without the same level of scrutiny and accountability as traditional military deployments. These strategic partnerships have raised concerns among Western powers, who see them as a threat to stability and a challenge to their interests in Africa. Section 7. America's Missed Opportunities, a Legacy of Neglect. While China and Russia are aggressively expanding their influence in Africa, the United States appears to be on the back foot. Years of inconsistent engagement, a focus on aid over strategic investment, and a lack of clear strategy have allowed China and Russia to gain ground. The United States has long viewed Africa through the lens of humanitarian aid and security concerns, neglecting the continent's vast economic potential and the aspirations of its people. This approach has created a perception of indifference and paternalism, undermining U.S. credibility. Moreover, the United States has struggled to articulate a compelling narrative about its role in Africa. While China promotes a vision of shared prosperity and win-win cooperation, the United States' message often gets lost in the rhetoric of counterterrorism and democracy promotion. This lack of a clear and consistent strategy has hampered U.S. efforts to compete with China and Russia in Africa. Section 8. A patchwork approach. Can the United States catch up? Recognizing the growing challenge posed by China and Russia, the United States has recently taken some steps to re-engage with Africa. However, these efforts have been piecemeal and lack the scale and scope of its rivals' initiatives. The Biden administration has announced plans to invest in infrastructure, promote trade, and strengthen security partnerships in Africa. However, these pledges have yet to translate into concrete action on the ground. Moreover, the United States continues to be hampered by bureaucratic inertia, a lack of coordination among government agencies, and a tendency to view Africa through a security-centric lens. Without a fundamental shift in its approach, the United States risks falling further behind China and Russia in the race for influence in Africa. Section 9. A Call to Action, Securing America's Future in Africa. The stakes for the United States in Africa are high. As China and Russia expand their influence, the United States risks losing access to critical resources, markets, and strategic partnerships. Moreover, it faces the prospect of a more unstable and conflict-prone continent. To effectively compete with China and Russia, the United States needs a comprehensive and sustained strategy that prioritizes the following. Strategic investment. The United States must move beyond aid and focus on strategic investments in infrastructure, energy, and technology. This requires a long-term commitment and a willingness to partner with African nations on their own terms. Trade and economic engagement. The United States must deepen its trade and economic ties with Africa, promoting fair trade practices, supporting African entrepreneurship, and creating mutually beneficial partnerships. People-to-people ties. The United States must invest in building stronger people-to-people ties with Africa, promoting educational exchanges, cultural diplomacy, and collaboration in science and technology. Security cooperation. While respecting African sovereignty, the United States should continue to partner with African nations to address shared security threats, such as terrorism, transnational crime, and climate change. The United States cannot afford to ignore the new scramble for Africa. It is time for a bold and proactive approach that recognizes Africa's strategic importance and its potential as a partner in building a more prosperous and secure world.